Welcome to the next episode of our Focusing Pathways podcast. In this episode, Therese speaks to Rafael Villeta. Rafael is a focusing trainer and a focusing orientated therapist. He previously worked in graphic design and painting and was also a tennis coach for 28 years with the Madrid Tennis Federation. Rafael is working and researching with Kevin McEvenew and Barbara Dickinson, who are in the whole body focusing and interactive focusing field. So you will notice that this conversation with Therese allows movement to be present in their interaction, and both are attending to what is present for them in the immediate moment. We invite you to create some space to fully receive this conversation.
Good morning, Rafael, and it's really lovely to have you here on our podcast today.
Good morning, Trace. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to join you and to participate in this podcast, which is so important for me that there's a focusing podcast online and in the net. Yeah, so thank you for doing this for our community as well.
Thank you. I'd like to start off by asking you, Rafael, how did focusing find you?
Okay, so yeah, let me take just a couple of seconds maybe to fill your question and yeah, I was working as a graphic designer in a foundation, and one of the sections of the foundation were uh, related to personal growth, and we have focusing there, focusing courses, focusing workshops, and so it was so easy for me to get one of those courses. So I took it and I really liked it. And yeah, and I felt like, this is some kind of integration between mind and body. And there's a sort of carrying forward thing here that is so interesting. And yes, then I wanted to know more. Isabel Gascon was the trainer who was offering all those workshops, and yes, that's the way I started, and yeah, I never stopped from them.
I love the way that it came so naturally, and I'm curious about what it was that you say it was personal growth that you were working on in your graphic design job, working on that. But what was it that drew you to that focusing workshop, or had you any idea even what focusing was about then?
Well, yeah, what happened, I guess for most of the people, I'm going to talk about myself. You cannot discover focusing in one day or in 1 year. Uh, yeah, it took me a while to understand how it worked. Yeah, and especially the false sounds thing. Yeah, Anne Weiser says that it took her a while to understand what the false sounds is, and when she was training people in focusing. So it's a sort of mystery. For me, it still is a mystery what a false sense is. So yeah, at that moment, focusing was meaningful for me at the beginning, from the very beginning. But then it's been changing so much what focusing means to me, and then I've been using it in different spaces. I mean, different activities, and yeah. So I started to understand focusing in a very different ways. Maybe especially with tennis, because well, in sports, and it's not somehow, it's not applied. It's not like something that you can see very easily people using focusing in sports.
Mm. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that, because there's something about when I think of sport and I think of people in a state of flow, is that somehow related to focusing, or what is it? How is it your sense of it, that focusing and tennis, that it can come together somehow?
Yeah, Trace, thank you for the word flow, because it's resonating inside me, and something in me is saying yes, it has to be with the flow, and it has to be with this expression. This, I guess it's an American expression, which is being in the zone. So the flow and being in the zone is so related to this state of body and mind you want to get into when you're practicing tennis, when you're playing tennis. And yeah, focusing can facilitate this. Cannot control it, but it can make it happen in some degree. That's my experience with myself and with my pupils, because I've been teaching tennis for almost 30 years. Last 12 years teaching in the Madrid Tennis Federation. I'm based in Madrid. And yeah, it's been exciting to just focusing on at work. I guess everybody can do that. And for me, it was sort of my way to keep interested in my job, because 30 years teaching tennis is a lot.
Mm, mm. And Rafael, how did knowing focusing, how did that change the way you teach tennis? Or did it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true that when you say change, that's true. It changed the way I teach tennis. Basically because it gave me a sort of a structure of something that was going on already. At first, mindfulness and yoga was the way I could, well, my structures, favorite structures I was using to play and teach tennis. But yeah, focusing was something different. Deeper, basically deeper, and yeah, and yes, just getting in touch with this sensation of moving and focusing at the same time. So yeah, now I can feel a sort of attunement in my body. It has to do with movement and hitting the ball and being very present in the game. And it has to do with proprioception, which is a concept that tennis teachers use. which means that you know what your body is doing, because you can feel it, and focusing helps you to make sense of the movements, to really understand how is the whole situation, how is the whole movement, or even the whole situation in the game. So that gives me the possibility of make sense of the game in a different way. It's more like a meaningful way of playing tennis.
Mm.
And that means to me that it's not so much about winning or losing. It has to do with challenging myself and challenging my opponent, and doing something together as well.
Mm. Yeah, when I was listening to you, what came to me is how I often focus when I'm walking, and how I find that a very natural process when I'm moving. And there's something about, I don't know, movement that, does it make focusing easier, or is it that we can come into the body a little bit easier? And I notice, Raphael, that when I've spoken to you before, and I notice you're doing it now, that you're making very tiny body movements. To me, it looks like little circular movement with your body. And I notice that I'm drawn to mirror that, and that seems to connect us across Zoom. So there's something about the movement that seems really important.
Yes, Trace, thank you for mentioning all that. It's awakening me something, something is, first of all, the movement is somehow like allowing the movement to be present here between us, and I can feel like sort of yes when you say it's connecting us. Is what I feel is yes, Trace and me you're connecting through this, maybe through this movement, which is basically like an energy that is going on between us, something that we cannot control, something that I would say is helping us to co-regulate this moment, and it's helping us to interact and communicate in some of the levels, not only in the verbal level, I mean. And it's making me nervous. This thing is there's some nervousness when I get in touch with this awakened energy during the podcast. So yeah, it's funny that it's somehow it's like, yeah, it makes me nervous.
Mm.
I wonder how it's for you, Trace.
Yeah, I'm smiling a little because I was nervous beforehand. I was nervous. I really noticed that nervousness before we started. But I find the movement a little soothing. And like you say, I feel it connects us a little more. And so I think for me, it's a little calming, and it makes such sense when you say co-regulation. Feels like, yeah, we're regulating each other through this exchange, and it makes such sense that it's all about energy, and that focusing is tapping into this really natural flow of energy. And yeah, so there's a real rightness about it for me.
Yeah, yeah. And it has to do so much with focusing on this. Yes. Because we are in this path of validating what's going on, even when it's not, we cannot control it. It has a mind on its own, and the moment is, we're not doing the movement. We are just allowing the movement to happen. Is inner directed, as Kevin McCabe says. It's an inner directed movement, and some people are, let's say, their body movement, this sort of body movement is available in their body for some people. For some people, it's not. And to me, it's like a different way of focusing. Is better or worse. It's different. When my body connects with this movement, and I can see your trace moving, and I can feel the connection, and I'm starting to feel sense through all this energy. And in this case, and I'm not only focusing alone, but I'm focusing with you. So it's something that goes back and forth, like playing tennis in a different way, in the same way of conventional tennis, but in a different way. Absolutely, because we're on Zoom right now, but still, for me, the experience is similar to play tennis. What we're doing right now is something that is, the ball is going back and forth.
Yeah, and I'm really noticing that, the back and forth, and I'm noticing how that it's changing all the time. So as we go back and forth, what's in me is changing in response to what I hear you saying and watching you moving. And it's like something is carrying forward, flowing in this conversation, that the image that comes is of bobbing along on a stream or something, just seeing where it's going.
Uh, mm, mm, mm. Yeah, sometimes I define this structure like a call and response related to when you're in a tennis court and you're warming up or knocking up, or you're playing casually with your opponent, and your opponent is something more than your opponent, is because you're trying to keep the ball in play. And yeah, I can feel that's what we are doing now, Trace. I don't know how it's for you now.
Yeah, so for me, there's a kind of a pausing, a really natural pausing, and a curiosity as to where we go next, what direction now, and that all feels so rich, and yet there feels more. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering about that space where we meet in this back and forth, or that bigger energy that we go back and forth in. I don't know how to put it. The words aren't clear, I feel.
Yeah, so as you're describing all that, what comes to me is that the best thing we can do right now is offering the curiosity we have available at this moment to all this situation, all this complexity. I say complicity is complexity, complex situation, and the complicity I can feel with you right now.
Mm. Mm.
So the curiosity is our ally. For me, the curiosity is not that we know where we're going, because we don't know. Even when we are somehow like trying to get this podcast somewhere. For me, the curiosity is is my main ally. So the podcast is going to be like an interesting thing.
Mm. Yeah, and when you say the word curiosity, what comes for me is, you talked about your many, many years playing tennis, and I'm wondering about what else you're doing with focusing now, because I know you trained as a therapist. So it's like all that led you to somewhere that's quite different now.
Uh, yeah, so I'm taking your question in, so I can feel in my body. My body sense. How is that question for me? Because I can answer right away with something, but I decide just to wait and feel your question. Yeah, first thing that comes to me is this moment. This happened last summer. I couldn't combine my job as a tennis teacher with my job as a therapist. It was too much for my schedule, for my agenda. So I decided to quit my job in the tennis federation, and I didn't hesitate at all. I just want to keep working as a therapist and keep researching with Kevin McCaveny and Barbara Dickinson, mainly Kevin McCaveny with whole body focusing, and with this thing where we are naming, well, he's naming the different from the way I'm naming it. Is we are still, we don't know if we're going to find something out of this. I mean, on a structure, talking about structure, but it has to do with what he calls heartfelt conversation, and I call focusing, synchronizing hearts. And for Barbara Dickinson is exploring interaction, which comes from interactive focusing. She's teaching interactive focusing. So all those structures together is what comes to me, what I want to keep researching. And I couldn't make it if I was working at the tennis federation, teaching 5 or 6 hours per day in Madrid, and unable to go somewhere else, to travel or to, yeah. So that's what comes to me.
Mm. So it sounds like you're putting all your energy or focusing is very central in everything you do now, and that it's bringing you this work with Kevin and with Barbara is it bringing you in a new direction, or is it somehow very connected to everything you have been doing before?
Yeah, okay, I'm taking your question in, Trace. Yes, coming to me a sort of image. At first, it was a line. This line started when I started to play tennis. And with this handicap, I have a handicap with my eyes. I cannot see very well. So it's an important handicap when you play tennis. So that's somehow like the start of this line. So the image now is not a line, but it's like a path. I'm into this path, and now you're somehow like visiting me and into this path I'm doing. So the path can change direction, but it still is the same path. And that started at that point when I was starting to play tennis, and my resources were different from the resources around me. I mean, the resources that players around me had. It's a different way of playing tennis for me. So before I knew anything about tennis, I mean, about yeah, I said about tennis, but I meant about focusing. Maybe I said about tennis because tennis for me is different concept that is for maybe for most of the players. So what happened is that my body started to develop, to fold real resources to play tennis in my condition, I would say. Meaning that, if we are talking about focusing, I had to feel sense the whole situation, and so that was helping me to explore the possibilities of the game, even when I couldn't see the ball very well. And my body started to do that. I mean, that my mind didn't know about any of this. And so I started to develop all those resources I needed to play tennis differently from the bodies around me. And that meant at that time that even when I didn't know, I was somehow watching carefully my opponent, how my opponent was moving, how my opponent was hitting the ball, and watching carefully how the ball was bouncing, the sounds of my ground stroke on my ground stroke opponent as well. Any sensation of my body moving. And the feeling of the space of the tennis court and the pace of the game, the pace of the ball coming back and forth, the rhythm of the game. And the ball was dictating, maybe the ball was dictating that pace, that rhythm. But me and my opponent were involved in that pace, in a sort of dance. So yeah, I'd like to know if something comes to you when I describe all this, right?
Yeah, I really love all that. So what comes is that sense of, the starting with a physical difference, that how your body knew, the knowing that came from your body, that physical difference, I don't know, brought you to play tennis in a whole-bodied way. And I don't really know a whole lot about whole body focusing, but in what you described just now, that seemed to me it was like your whole body is involved in all aspects of the game, the ball and the space and the interaction with the other person. So it really helped me understand, that it's like a whole different way of being present in your body and of doing something, of doing anything.
Yeah, so yeah, when you say all that, what comes to me is that I was searching a sort of a structure. Not at that time, because I started to play tennis when I was 4 or 5. But when I started to teach tennis at 20 or 21, I started searching for a structure for all this, and yoga helped me out, and mindfulness. But well, focusing was something very different, very, very different. Because when you were describing how you understand this tennis, this approach to tennis, what came to me was, yes, that's true. All that felt sensing of the whole situation in the court, with my body in it, with my opponent body in it, with the ball coming back and forth. And all that is actualizing my ground strokes. So the way I move and the way I'm hitting the ball, the way I'm responding to that situation is being actualized by my capability of holding the whole situation, the holistic perspective, where I can find movement and sounds and competition and tennis and space, a ball, rackets, the memory of so many things, so much memory. Because I was playing tennis every day. So the memory is part of that felt sensing as well to me. And all that memory is being actualized at that moment of play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I when you describe that, for me, it's like a real opening up. It's like a sensing into so much more than what I would have perceived somebody really focused on a game of tennis with their eyes and kind of a narrow concentration, whereas what you're describing is so much more open and wider and the here and now and the past and the present.
Yeah, exactly. When you say that, Trace, what comes to me is that when I began to understand this, well, take that perspective, I started to see my pupils in a different way, somehow hypnotized by the ball. They seems to be hypnotized by the ball. So it was somehow like they couldn't see just the ball and nothing else. They couldn't get in touch with their bodies. So it was, I felt I was struggling with the situation, because as long as they couldn't feel their bodies, I couldn't teach them anything. I need them to, to be able to feel their bodies as they were playing tennis. Otherwise, we couldn't actualize their ground strokes. So again, it's this false sense of thing where you want to, involve everything, not only the ball, but the body and everything that is actually involved in the game. Otherwise it's so difficult to change the patterns of a ground stroke.
Yeah, I really understand now the whole process from when you started to play tennis as a little boy, and how all of that learning and all of that coming into your body that maybe you had to do before other people in a different way to other people has brought you to where you are now. So it seems I have a real sense of that, Rafael. So where are you now with focusing, and what's really important now and rich for you?
Yeah, I know we are talking about this line that is a path, and you're visiting me in the path, and you're curious about what's going on now with all this. So now I'm not in the tennis court anymore, enjoying something very similar to what we're doing together now. I'm practicing this with my clients in my private practice as a therapist. It's part of the structure I'm offering in therapy. So it's a way of relating to my clients, this back and forth structure. And there's something that happened in my research with Kevin McCavity and Barbara Dickinson. That's why I'm visiting them. Next week, I'm going to Toronto and New Jersey to meet them in person and keep researching all this, but in a different way, because the energy changes. I don't know if that's better, but changes when you are in person. So we want to unfold this possibility of keep researching this interaction, this heartfelt conversation, this focus on synchronizing hearts in this different environment, where we can touch each other, even we can appreciate the energy between us differently.
And I notice how often during our conversation you use the word structure. That seems very important, and yet it seems to me, when Jenlyn was coming up with his steps for focusing. That was his structure too, I suppose, for focusing. And yet there's the felt sensing and the flow and the being willing to attend in a very natural way to whatever is happening that seems at odds with structure. So the structure is necessary, and yet, I don't know, what would you say with all that?
Yeah, first thing that comes to me when I listen to you describing this is the word receptivity. It's so important to get into this receptivity mode. So when I feel receptive, or when my body feels receptive, I'm taking all the structures I have away. Somehow I'm asking all my structures to step aside so I can be receptive. To me, that's very important. And being receptive is the moment where I can be receptive. Is the moment where the game starts. This game of tennis starts.
Yeah. Yeah, that really I really feel that the letting go in order to be really present and here and now. So, but I'm curious about that word structure still, just
Yeah,
because you mentioned it so often.
yeah, I know, but I wanted
So,
to talk that.
yeah.
So I wanted to know what your reaction was. But the thing is that, yeah, somehow I can feel in you this struggling sensation, struggling situation where, but I need a structure, because we need a structure to go ahead with this, to to make sense of all this. So that's where what I'm researching with Kevin and Barbara is this situation where we are somehow like expanding our receptivity and at the same time, somehow, yeah, using a structure so we are not gonna get lost in all that receptivity. And the thing is that I cannot tell you much about this at the moment, because all I know is that this structure is this tennis conversation we're having now, this back and forth conversation, structure we are practicing now, where I asking you, how is all this for you after I'm saying all this?
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So I feel easier with that word structure. For what comes now is the idea of the structure allowing the space, so the structure holding the space where all of the focusing process can happen and all the unfolding and emerging can take place, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. When you say that, I feel like it. Yes, that's how I solve this for me.
Okay, so we're coming to the end, Rafael, and I feel like I could continue for a very long time more. But just to finish, is there anything else that feels important, or what's here for you now as we come to finish our tennis match?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question, Trace. Yeah, maybe there's something else about this structure that I could say. It comes to me from fine arts. I studied fine arts at the university. I've been a painter for a while. And so, yeah, one of the processes as a painter I used was this movement between the whole picture and the detail. So going back and forth from the generality of the picture is very similar to false-sensing, but approach to a person or any task or anything at all. For me, it's so important to keep movement between those ends, and then is the whole picture, and the other one is when I approach to my canvas and I stroke with my brush something over the canvas. So yeah, I'm going to a particular part of the picture and I do something there, which could be a felt meaning because there's something very, very concrete and very visible. And then I had to go back and see how that stroke impacts in the whole picture. So I'm felt sensing again. Yeah, this is very very important for me. Felt sensing, and then go for something that could be a part of me or part of my client when I'm in a session. So what's going on with this part? Does this part was for you, or what's the intention of this part? What's the need of this part? And then I have to go back and see the whole picture again, like what the painters do. Any artist, any visual artist does. Yeah, that's for me. That's a good way to complete or end this. Well, my story about what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, yeah. When you say that about the painting and the sensing in and coming out to attend to the detail, and I really felt that's what we do in focusing, and also in interacting with others. And if we could do more of that, if we could attend inward and felt sense, and then come outward with, it would be a different outward, wouldn't it? If we could do that more often.
Yeah, and what comes to me when you say that is that when I step back, when I witness in the whole situation, and that situation is an interaction with someone else, I can feel the other person as well. The whole person, which is so important to be able to feel the whole person you have in front of you.
Yeah. That sounds like the perfect place to stop, Rafael. So I really want to thank you so much for our lovely conversation.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Trace.
Thank you.